Today, we're going to talk a little bit about tendons and doing rehab for a chronic tendon problem. And the thing you don't want to do is you don't want to rest it. There's some really interesting data by Jill Cook. I'm going to put her link down below. It was actually quite interesting because she was talking about a study that was comparing an abnormal dysfunctional tendon with a normal tendon and looking at the difference between both. Now, in the dysfunctional tendon, there was some thickening, but what was very interesting was the abnormal tendon had more normal tissue than the normal tendon. That means that a person would have plenty of good tissue to do load training or resistance type training. So if you do what most therapists do, where they actually recommend rest, ice, heat, manual therapy, etc., you're probably not going to get anywhere. But if you do load training, where you're putting the body under a very gradual stress, starting with baby steps and slowly increasing more load on that tendon, over time, you're going to get a really good adaptation because there's enough good tissue there to work with. She also talks about the inflammatory process not really being a trigger for tendon problems. So this would explain if you do ice and heat and all these other physical therapies, you just won't really get anywhere. But if you personally have a tendon problem and you're trying to rehab it with rest and you're not getting anywhere, now you know why. So if you're enjoying my content, which I hope you are, and you're applying this knowledge to your health, and you have a success, I'd really appreciate you sharing your success story. So click the link down below to my website where you can upload your success story so you can help inspire others.